Please, we need shelter. The storm is coming.
Can anyone help us?
A homeless man found a powerful billionaire and her child nearly dead. They had been violently washed ashore by the angry storm. He pulled the unconscious woman and her daughter to safety, and then his selfless act turned into a battle for justice. The sea was crashing down heavily, making a loud, rough sound like powerful thunder and huge guns going off all at once. I was Milo, a man trying to survive on the streets, and I was crouched close to a small, weak fire. I had managed to start using wet pieces of driftwood found on the shore. The cold was digging deep into my bones, a painful ache that never truly went away, but I couldn't stop looking out at the wild, angry ocean in the dark night. Something in my stomach told me not to look away, and then I saw a pale piece of fabric shining faintly, followed by a child's small cry carried on the fierce wind, as two dark shapes were thrown hard onto the wet sand by the tide's strong pull. My body instantly reacted without any thought, pushing away all my exhaustion and the deep pain from the cold night, and I stumbled quickly toward the water, where the icy waves immediately rushed up and flooded my boots. I moved straight toward the two figures who were struggling hard to breathe and move against the rough sand. The little girl was coughing so hard and painfully, clawing at the wet shore and crying out, "Mommy!" as the woman next to her lay completely still, waves continuously slapping her body with cruel, cold force. I knew I had to be fast and strong if I wanted to save them both from the angry sea that had almost taken their lives. I pulled the child out first. She was so small and freezing, and I quickly wrapped her in the largest outer layer I was wearing, which was the warmest thing I owned in the entire world. Then I turned back for the mother, Ilara, and pulled her free from the dangerous grip of the surf with a loud grunt of effort, laying her down gently on the beach. My own chest was heaving and aching from the sudden great effort, and I immediately dropped down onto my knees, my hands shaking badly as I pressed them against Ilara's cold face, begging her to breathe and not give up now. After a terrifyingly long moment, she gasped loudly, water poured from her mouth, and she began dragging air painfully into her lungs, rolling onto her side as I let out a huge breath of relief, whispering, "That's good, stay awake now, stay with me." The little girl, Zoe, was shivering badly inside the protective fabric I had wrapped her in, and she looked up at me with huge frightened eyes, unsure if she should truly trust me or if she should be completely scared. Ilara's eyes fluttered open slowly, cloudy and wild with shock, and she saw me leaning over her, a stranger with wet dripping hair and a face covered in stubble from being outside so long. Fear immediately flashed across her face, and she whispered, Don't touch us," pulling her small daughter closer to her side in a protective gesture, completely dismissing the fact that I had just saved their lives from drowning. I raised both my hands slowly, showing her I meant absolutely no harm, and the hurt of her rejection flickered quickly in my tired eyes as I said softly, "I'm not here to hurt you. The sea almost took your lives, but I pulled you back from the worst of it." Zoe, still shivering but clutching the rough material for warmth, quietly whispered to her mother, "Mommy, he saved us." But Ilara's deep suspicion was firm and strong. Her entire life had taught her that danger often wore simple, common clothes and looked like trouble. She turned her face away from me, clutching Zoe tightly, even as the cruel wind kept slicing across the shore and chilling them to the bone, showing me the clear truth she didn't want to admit. Without warmth and shelter, they wouldn't survive this dangerous night. I stood up, pointing weakly toward the city lights that twinkled far away past the sandy hills, and told her, "There is a place there. It's not a comfortable place, but it is much, much better than staying here on this cold beach." Ilara tried hard to stand up, but immediately staggered, feeling like her body was weighted down heavily with stones, dragging her strength away from her. Zoe, however, held onto the fabric wrapped around her, still shaking from the cold that seemed to come from everywhere. Torn between her deep fear of me and the complete lack of mercy from the storm and the freezing air, Ilara finally gave a stiff, small nod of agreement, showing her defeat. "Just keep your distance from us," she warned me again, her voice low and serious. I didn't say anything back to argue. I just gently adjusted the coat tighter around Zoe to give her more protection and warmth, before I turned and led them carefully inland toward the city's old buildings. We walked slowly across the heavy, wet sand dunes for what felt like forever, making every step a complete struggle. Every sudden gust of wind slapped the cold, wet material of their clothes hard against their skin, chilling them further. Zoe's teeth were chattering so loudly I could hear the quick noise over the wind's soft sound, so I kept my pace very slow and steady, so her small legs could easily keep up with my much longer ones. My own hands were raw and sore from all the hard work I had done, carrying driftwood for the fire and then dragging their bodies from the dangerous, powerful sea. I decided to ask her name gently. "What is your name?" She glanced quickly at her mother, checking if it was okay before whispering, "Zoe." I nodded slowly, trying to smile, and told her, "That is a very pretty name." The small smile I gave her felt strange and rusty on my tired face, but I kept going. Alara said absolutely nothing at all. Her eyes were fixed straight ahead, watching me constantly like a predator watches its prey. Her silence was heavy, much heavier than the storm that was finally starting to calm down and turn into a light drizzle. I decided not to ask for her name. I figured she would only tell me when she was truly ready to trust me, which seemed like a long way off in the future. After what felt like an extremely long and painful walk for all of us, we finally reached the edge of the city, where huge, old abandoned warehouses stood like silent, sleeping stone giants in the growing darkness. I guided them toward a broken-down building with wood boards covering the windows and walls covered in old, faded paint from years ago. Inside, the air smelled strongly of cold, damp concrete, but at least it was completely dry and finally out of the terrible wind. They saw a quiet space with a pile of simple materials and a beat-up, dented lantern that I used for light. "It's not much of a place," I mumbled to them, feeling a deep wave of shame rush over me because I knew it was a terrible sight. "But it will keep the cold off you and keep you warm through the night." Alara stopped stiffly at the doorway, her chin lifting slightly, a clear, proud signal that she felt she was far too important and too good for this dirty place where I lived. But then Zoe sneezed loudly again, a wet, rattling sound that broke the silence. Alara sighed, a long, tired sound of complete defeat, and quickly ushered her daughter inside the protected space. I immediately started digging through my few small items and pulled out a battered thermos. It was my most valuable treasure right now. "It's still warm inside," I said, pouring a little bit of the hot liquid into my single tin cup before holding the cup out toward Zoe to warm her up. Ilara's eyes narrowed instantly, becoming sharp and suspicious. Don't touch that," she ordered quickly, fear clear and strong in her voice, worried that the food might be dangerous. But Zoe was too cold and tired to listen to her mother. She eagerly reached out her small hand for the cup, and I immediately pulled my hands back, not wanting to cause a fight between them. I placed the cup carefully on the floor between us. "It's your choice to take it or not," I said softly, stepping back to give them all the space they needed. After a long, tense pause filled with silence, Alara finally picked up the cup, sniffed it deeply, checking for anything dangerous or wrong with it, and then finally handed it to her daughter. Zoe drank the warm liquid quickly and greedily, and the sudden warmth slowly brought a little bit of color back into her pale, cold face. Ilara watched me the entire time, her deep mistrust still as sharp and clear as a newly broken piece of glass in the fading light. As the small light from the lantern flickered and threw long shadows across the cracked concrete walls of the warehouse, I sat far apart from them, giving them all the space and privacy they wanted and needed. I watched Ilara without being obvious about it. Even though she was soaking wet and her clothes were dirty, I could sense that she belonged to a world of wealth and importance, and she did not belong here in this broken warehouse with dirty, cracked windows. "What were you doing out there by the water?" I asked quietly, hoping for some kind of answer. She immediately went stiff with tension. "That is none of your business," she answered sharply, refusing to share anything about her life. I nodded slowly, accepting her answer without pushing the issue. "Fair enough," I replied, respecting her privacy. Silence returned, broken only by Zoe's little hiccups, as she finally drifted into a deep, exhausted sleep, tucked inside the rough, simple materials I had provided. I stretched out my body on the cold concrete floor. My back ached terribly, but I made no move to take any more comfort than I had already given them. I made sure they were the most comfortable people in the room. Sleep did not come easily for me. My mind kept showing me the same frightening images. The crashing waves, the limp body in my arms, and Zoe's terrified eyes. I kept thinking about who they really were and why they were out in that storm, fighting the sea. I knew enough about the world to recognize money when I saw it, and Alara had it, but money hadn't saved them from the deadly sea tonight. I had. When I finally drifted off to sleep, it was to the gentle, steady sound of Zoe's breathing and the soft, constant, worried movement of her mother, Alara, who stayed awake, constantly adjusting her things, always keeping herself firmly between her child and me, the man who had just saved them. The morning light was gray and cold as it finally pushed its way through the cracks in the wooden boards covering the windows. I woke up to find Zoe sitting up near the lantern, staring right at me with a child's pure curiosity. She whispered softly, "You look like a pirate, Milo." I managed a dry, scratchy laugh in response. "I don't think real pirates sleep on cold concrete floors, kid," I told her honestly. Her mother stirred instantly, her eyes snapping open and immediately narrowing when she saw me talking to her daughter. "Stay away from her," Alara snapped quickly, her voice sharp with instant anger and renewed fear of the stranger. "I just saved your lives, lady," I shot back, the words coming out sharper and angrier than I had meant them to be, tired of being treated like a dangerous criminal or a threat. Her cheeks immediately turned bright red with a mix of anger and embarrassment at my sudden honesty. "And now, what do you expect from me? Are you waiting for a thank you?" she demanded. My jaw tightened hard, but I chose to stay quiet, deciding not to argue with her when I was so utterly exhausted. Instead, I quietly gathered my few small belongings and stepped outside into the city's loud noises, which were already fully awake with the sounds of cars honking in the distance. Here, only the pigeons moved among the broken walls. I lit the end of a cigarette butt I had saved and took a deep, painful drag of smoke into my lungs, feeling deeply tired of this life and everything in it. I knew I could have simply left them right then and there without looking back. I had done my one good deed, and I had gotten them to a safe, dry place, so my job was officially over. But when Zoe's little head quickly peeked through the doorway, her eyes wide and full of trust, I knew deep down that I couldn't just walk away and abandon them to face the harsh city alone. I stepped hard on the cigarette butt, crushing it under my heel, and went back inside, my voice much quieter now. "There is food nearby," I told them. "I will go out and get us something small to eat." Alara hesitated for a long moment, but Zoe's small, hopeful whisper broke her resistance to accepting my help. "Mommy, please," Zoe begged. Finally, Alara gave a stiff, small nod of agreement. "Go. But you must come back here," she warned me firmly. I returned about an hour later, carrying a sack of bread that was a bit squashed, a few bruised apples, and some cartons of milk. I had traded some work for the leftovers from a kind street vendor I knew. I set the food down quietly, watching Zoe's face immediately light up with pure happiness and relief. She tore into the bread greedily, eating very quickly. Alara ate with a quiet, practiced grace, the kind you learn at fancy tables. But the deep hunger in her eyes gave away her real feelings of desperation. For the first time since the storm, her eyes softened slightly, showing a little gratitude. "Why are you truly helping us like this?" she asked, her voice quiet and low, still completely confused by my actions. I just shrugged slightly. The answer felt too simple for her complex, rich world. "Because someone has to do it," I replied honestly. She stared at me, truly confused by my answer. In her world, everything you received came with a clear price tag attached and a debt you had to pay later. In my world, you helped others simply so that everyone could survive the impossible conditions. As the day went on, the storm finally turned into a light, weak drizzle, and Zoe quickly started to feel much better. She explored the warehouse with the pure, simple joy of a child, skipping over the small patches of sunlight that came through the broken boards covering the windows. I kept myself busy by fixing up the fire pit, using scraps of old wood and a rusty metal grate to make it safer and stronger for the nights to come. Alara sat on the materials I had provided, watching both Zoe and me like a queen who was stranded in a strange, rough, and unfamiliar land. Finally, she spoke a very important word, her voice clear and formal. "My name is Alara," she said. I nodded slowly, meeting her gaze steadily. "Milo," I replied, giving her my name in return. The exchange was short, but it changed the air completely between us. Names meant something real. They built a bridge, even if it was a very fragile one, across the great distance between our two worlds. Zoe clapped her hands together happily. "Now we are friends," she announced. Alara's mouth pressed into a thin, tight line, showing that she firmly disagreed with that idea, but she didn't say anything to stop the girl's happiness. That night, Alara still kept her daughter very close to her side, but she didn't jump or move away when I sat a bit closer to the fire for warmth. Zoe fell asleep quickly, completely tired from the long day of running and exploring. Alara's eyes watched me for a long time in the dim light. She still had deep suspicion, but now it was mixed with a growing, unwanted curiosity about me. "You have been living here for a long time?" she asked finally, wanting to know more. I shrugged, a quick, tired movement. "Too long to remember when I first arrived," I answered simply. She frowned slightly. "You do not belong in a place like this, Milo," she stated firmly. I gave a sharp, empty laugh in response. "Lady, the streets don't ask to see your job history before they decide to take you in." She didn't say anything more after that, but for the first time, she truly realized how little she understood about the lives of people who lived completely outside of the safety and luxury she had always known. The next morning, trouble found us very quickly. I had gone out early to find more supplies, moving like a shadow through the quiet back alleys of the city. I came back with fresh bruises on my face and a split, bleeding lip, having run into some unexpected conflict. Ilara's eyes went wide with alarm the moment she saw my injuries. "What exactly happened to you?" she demanded, her voice full of sudden concern for my safety. I wiped the blood away with the back of my hand, trying to act calm and strong. "I ran into some people who don't like sharing their territory," I explained briefly. The reality of the violence I faced every single day made Alara's stomach twist with deep fear. Zoe gasped when she saw my cuts and immediately rushed to my side. "You are hurt," she cried out sadly. I forced a weak smile for her. "I have had much worse, kid. Don't you worry about it at all." Ilara's deep-seated mistrust started a silent fight against a sudden, very strong gratitude she couldn't ignore. I had absolutely no reason to come back to them. I could have just walked away and been safe, but despite my bleeding and my pain, I had chosen to return to the warehouse. For the first time. Alara began to wonder if what she saw on the outside, the dirty face and the simple clothes, was hiding a much bigger, more honorable truth about who I really was inside. As the daylight began to fade into the dim light of dusk, we heard voices echoing outside the warehouse walls. They were rough, cruel, and very dangerous. The exact same voices that had given me my fresh bruises that morning. I instantly went stiff, making a sharp hand motion for absolute silence from the two of them. Alara quickly pulled Zoe close to her, hiding her in the darkest corner of the room so no one could see the small girl. Shadows stretched across the doorway of the warehouse, and then the leader's voice cut through the silent air, loud and mocking. "We told you this was our spot, Milo," he called out. I slowly stood up, placing my body firmly between them and Alara and Zoe. My tired frame felt straight and hard now, and my voice was low but very strong. "Not tonight. Not here," I warned them, ready for the fight. Alara's heart pounded hard and fast, fear clawing at her throat, almost making her choke on her own breath. Zoe whimpered quietly, but my posture was steady, like a human shield made strong by years of hardship and constant fighting. For the first time in her life, Alara felt completely safer with me, the man she didn't trust, than she would have been if I had left her alone. The gang stepped inside, 3 men with cruel, empty eyes and ugly, mocking smiles. "Look, he got himself a woman now," one of them sneered, his eyes moving over Alara disrespectfully. Her stomach felt cold and sick with fear, and my fists clenched tightly at the insult. "Leave them out of this fight," I warned them sternly. The leader laughed loudly, a nasty, sharp sound that echoed in the empty room. "Or what, old man? You're going to fight all 3 of us all by yourself?" My voice dropped, becoming very quiet and very serious, showing my intense focus. "If I have to fight, then I will fight," I replied simply, showing them I would not back down. Alara held her breath completely. The air felt thick with tension, like a powerful storm about to break. She had always thought of me as weak and completely broken, but now she saw the true strength inside me, the kind of steel that is forged only by surviving impossible, terrible things. She knew I might be easily defeated by 3 men, but she also knew I would never give up the fight to protect them with everything I had left. This new understanding of my true character scared her more deeply than the immediate danger did. The confrontation ended only when a police siren wailed far away in the distance, getting slightly louder as it approached the city limits. The sound was enough to make the gang scatter instantly, running quickly out the way they came in. I leaned back against the cold wall, completely drained of all energy, sweat dripping down my temples. But the immediate threat was gone. Ilara stared at me, unable to speak. The words of thanks locked tightly in her throat from the shock and fear. Zoe ran forward immediately and wrapped her small arms tightly around my waist. "You kept us safe!" she cried out happily. I forced a small, tired smile and gently ruffled her hair. Ilara's throat felt tight and dry. She desperately wanted to thank me, but her pride and her long-held habit of being completely self-sufficient still wouldn't let her speak a word of gratitude. "We cannot stay here anymore," she finally whispered, breaking the heavy silence. I nodded in agreement. "I know another place where we can hide. It is much safer, I promise you both." Ilara looked at me, dirty, bruised, and utterly worn out, and truly wondered how a man who had nothing left in the world could still give so much of himself away to strangers. We left the warehouse when the night was darkest, moving like silent ghosts through the shadowy back alleys and forgotten, quiet streets. Zoe skipped lightly between us, holding my rough, large hand as if it were the most secure and natural thing in the whole world, completely safe. For Ilara, every step next to me was a strange contradiction to her past life. I was the exact type of person her world had warned her strongly to avoid. Yet I had saved them not once, but twice, in 2 terrible, dangerous days. As the large city swallowed us up in its web of light and shadow, Ilara realized that our shared journey was only just starting. The storm that brought us together was just the first sign of a much bigger event to come into her life. The night felt jumpy and uncertain. Every dark corner whispered of potential danger lurking ahead. I led Ilara and Zoe through a series of very narrow alleys, our boots splashing loudly in the cold puddles left by the recent storm. Ilara's heart pounded hard and fast again. Every shadow felt like a trap, every sound like a direct, immediate threat. "Where are you taking us now, Milo?" she demanded to know, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. I didn't slow down my pace at all. "An old, abandoned shelter. It's much safer than that broken warehouse, I promise." She desperately wanted to believe me, but trust was a very rare and expensive thing for her to give away. It felt too hard and too difficult to grant to a stranger. But when Zoe stumbled over a cracked piece of pavement and I instantly lifted her into my arms without even thinking, Ilara saw something in my face, a soft, strong resolve that started to break down her deep, solid suspicion. We finally reached a crumbling church at the very edge of the town. Its windows were mostly broken, and the large wooden doors hung crookedly on rusty hinges, unused for years. I pushed the heavy doors open with a great effort, straining my back and shoulder. Inside, the air smelled strongly of old dust and forgotten hymns, a thick, heavy smell. The wooden pews were overturned and broken into pieces, but in a quiet, deep corner, a small stack of materials and a few candles showed that other people had used this place for refuge before us. "We can stay here," I said, my voice low and tired. "No one ever comes here anymore. It's completely forgotten." Ilara shivered, wrapping her daughter tighter against her body. "We shouldn't be here. This feels wrong and unsafe to me." I shrugged again, accepting her fear as normal. "We shouldn't be here at all, but this is the only dry, safe place we have left." I lit a single candle. Its small, brave light cast long shadows on my worn face, making me look both fierce and extremely tired from all the walking and fighting. Zoe immediately curled up in the blankets I provided, her exhaustion finally winning over her fear, and Ilara sat right beside her, still watching me very closely, still on guard. "Why are you truly doing this for us?" she asked suddenly, the question feeling heavy in the quiet, large room. "You don't know who we are, and we have absolutely nothing to give you in return for your help." I settled back against a cold stone pillar to rest my aching body. My body felt heavy and weary from the last few days. "I didn't save you for a payment," I murmured honestly, the truth ringing in the silence. "You looked like you desperately needed saving, so I simply helped you." Ilara's lips pressed into a tight, thin line. In her fancy, rich world, every single good deed meant you owed someone a debt. But my voice was completely different and honest. There was no greed, no bargaining, just the simple truth of the situation. And that truth, strangely, frightened her more deeply than any lie or trick could have, because it showed her a world she didn't know existed. The morning brought no peace or rest. Ilara woke to the harsh sound of shattering glass. I was instantly on my feet, my knife already in my hand, moving quickly toward the unexpected noise. A group of noisy teenagers had snuck inside, their bags rattling with cans of spray paint. "Look what we found here," one of them sneered, spotting Ilara in the darkness. I stepped immediately in front of them, completely blocking the view of the pews and Zoe. "Get out now," I ordered, my voice strong and clear. They laughed loudly at my command. "Who are you, old man? Do you live here? That's so pathetic and sad." I gripped my knife tighter in my hand. Ilara pulled Zoe close, her breath caught in her throat, praying for safety. Then, one of the boys rushed hard at me, thinking he could take me on. I moved fast, with controlled strength, and sent the boy sprawling hard onto the floor with a loud crash. The rest of the teenagers immediately scattered, their angry yells echoing as they ran away from the church as fast as they could. I slowly lowered the knife, breathing hard, feeling the sudden rush of adrenaline quickly fading from my body. Ilara's heart was racing in her chest. She had seen corporate battles, but never this raw, simple violence used only to protect her and her daughter. "You could have heard him, Milo," she whispered, her voice shaking badly. I shook my head slowly. "I didn't need to. I just needed them to know I would protect you both, no matter what it took to keep you safe." Ilara stared at me, feeling deeply conflicted inside her mind. I was dangerous, yes, but that danger had now saved her daughter 3 times from terrible trouble. For the first time, she truly wondered if real safety sometimes came in forms that her society had taught her to completely fear and avoid. Later, Ilara tried to wash herself with the little water we had in a cracked basin. Her reflection stared back, smeared marks on her face, the material she wore was ripped, and her hair was matted with sea salt and dirt. She looked nothing like the powerful person she really was. I approached quietly, setting down my old ragged towel for her. "Here," I offered it simply. She took it slowly, avoiding my eyes. "You still don't know who I really am," she said, as if reminding herself of her importance in the world. I leaned against the wall, tired but firm. "Does it really matter, Ilara?" I asked her directly. She blinked, surprised by the question. Everyone she knew had always cared exactly who she was, her title, her power, her money. But I, a man with nothing, seemed only to care about the simple act of our survival. This realization unsettled her more than her ruined appearance did. By noon, Zoe's stomach rumbled loudly, a clear sign of hunger. I offered to go out and scavenge for food again. Ilara hesitated, her fear returning as she watched me. "What if this time you don't come back to us and you leave us here alone?" she asked, the fear clear in her voice. I managed a tired half-smile for her. "Then you will finally have peace from my dirty face and my constant worry," I replied, with a hint of sad humor. She almost smiled back, against her will, and I left the quiet church. Hours later, I returned with canned beans, a fresh loaf of bread, and 2 bruised pears. Ilara looked at me skeptically, still suspicious of my good luck. "How do you keep finding food in this part of the city, Milo?" she demanded to know. I shrugged again, keeping my secret safe. "You learn the city's hidden secret places. The food that falls through the cracks, that's what I find and take." I handed the pears to Zoe, and her eyes brightened immediately with joy. Ilara's gaze rested on me for a long time, her curiosity slowly softening the hard edges of her suspicion. That evening, rain lightly tapped through the broken parts of the church roof, a quiet, soothing sound. I sat quietly sharpening my knife, the quiet, rhythmic sound filling the space, while Ilara watched me across the room, her arms crossed over her chest. "Where did you learn to be such a good soldier?" she asked suddenly, her voice low and curious. I didn't look up, focusing completely on the blade in my hand. "In the army, a long time ago when I was younger," I admitted. Ilara's eyes widened slightly in surprise. "You were a soldier for the country?" she asked, surprised by my past. I nodded slowly. "I was, until my life went completely wrong and fell apart." I didn't say anything more about it, but the deep sadness in my voice told her everything she needed to know about my past failures. Ilara leaned back against the pillar, completely confused. The man she had dismissed as a failure and a tramp had once worn a uniform and promised to protect the entire country. It was a huge, difficult contradiction for her to understand. How could someone fall so very far from their respected position? Zoe, sensing the sudden tension in the room, crawled onto my lap to comfort me. "Tell me a story, Milo," she pleaded quietly. I cleared my throat, surprised by the request. Ilara tensed, ready to pull her away, but the look of pure trust in Zoe's eyes stopped her from interfering. "All right," I began softly. "Once there was a man who flew with eagles high in the sky. He thought he would never crash, but one day a terrible storm came and tore his powerful wings away. He lived on the ground after that, watching the high sky, always waiting to feel like himself again, strong and free." Zoe tilted her head cutely, thinking hard about the meaning of the story. "Did he ever find his wings again, Milo?" she asked. I smiled faintly, the feeling strange on my face. "Maybe, with help from others. He started to find them again," I answered truthfully. Ilara's face softened completely, despite her attempts to stay hard and distant from me. The next morning, Ilara insisted that we leave the old church building immediately. "It is not safe anymore. Those nasty boys might come back here and hurt you badly," she said firmly. I didn't argue with her decision. We quickly packed our few things and slipped back into the busy streets of the city. But safety was only an idea that didn't exist for us right now. At a busy intersection, a clean, dark black vehicle suddenly pulled up very quickly next to us. Its tinted windows looked cold and threatening in the morning light. Two men in neat suits stepped out quickly and immediately began scanning the large crowd around us. Ilara froze instantly next to me, rigid with sudden fear. I noticed her sudden panic. "Do you know those men?" I whispered urgently into her ear. Her lips tightened in fear. "Business rivals," she confessed. "They have been trying to silence me and stop me for months now." I cursed quietly under my breath. Of course. Trouble always follows big money and corruption. "Keep walking. Don't look at them at all," I ordered. I grabbed her arm and quickly pulled her into the first alleyway we saw. As the men's eyes swept dangerously close to us, we ran through a confusing maze of back streets, moving as fast as we could. Ilara's body was shaking with the effort, and Zoe clung tightly to my shoulders as I carried her quickly, running as fast as I could. Behind us, the men shouted loudly, and their heavy footsteps got closer and closer to us. I shoved them through an old, rusty gate, slamming it shut hard behind us to slow the men down. "Run!" I commanded her. We ran across an abandoned factory floor, dust rising everywhere, with every step we took. Ilara's chest burned painfully from running so hard. Her body was not used to running this fast and hard. But I never slowed down, carrying Zoe like she weighed nothing at all, protecting her with my body. When we finally collapsed into a dark patch of shadows, Ilara was panting loudly. "Why? Why are they chasing me like this and trying to hurt us?" she gasped, unable to catch her breath. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself, and then confessed the reason for the chase. "Because I showed everyone their corruption. There are millions of dollars at stake, and they want to stop me." I shook my head slowly, understanding the situation immediately. "That figures perfectly. That is always how it is in your world. Trouble always follows money." We found shelter in another forgotten building, this time an old library. All the shelves were completely gone, but the thick stone walls were still strong and safe for us. Ilara sank onto a dusty bench, holding the now sleeping Zoe tightly in her lap, completely exhausted. I watched her in silence for a moment. "You put yourself in terrible danger by standing up to them," I said simply. Ilara met my gaze, her eyes showing a fierce determination. "I had no choice. People's lives were being ruined by their constant greed," she stated firmly. I studied her face for a long moment, truly believing her. Maybe she wasn't like all the other rich people I had met in my life. Maybe she was actually different and honorable. This small compliment from me surprised her greatly. Most people only asked her about profits and money, but I, a man with nothing, saw a real courage in her that she barely recognized in herself. Days passed in the library with a tense, careful rhythm. I taught Zoe how to play small games using old bits of chalk, drawing and playing tic-tac-toe on the dusty floor. Ilara watched us, and I heard her daughter's laughter return, a beautiful sound I hadn't heard from her since before the terrifying storm. Yet, every time I looked at Ilara, I felt a confusing mix of emotions: disgust at my own lack of cleanliness, strong gratitude for my protection, and a deep curiosity about the woman beneath the layers of protection she wore. At night, when Zoe was safely asleep, Ilara sometimes saw me staring up at the cracked ceiling, my eyes full of old, sad memories of my past. Once, she whispered softly, "What happened to you, Milo? What was the personal storm you didn't survive?" I only shook my head gently. "Another kind of storm, Ilara. One I couldn't beat or avoid," I replied honestly. One evening, while scavenging, I came back with a bloodied knuckle and a small bundle of fresh bread and fruit. Ilara frowned deeply when she saw my new injury. "What did you do to get that food? Tell me the truth," she demanded. I looked away from her, avoiding her intense gaze. "Don't ask questions you don't really want to hear the terrible answer to," I warned her. She pushed me harder for the truth. "Did you steal it from someone, Milo? Tell me." My voice suddenly became hard and angry at her suspicion. "I got the food," I snapped. "That is the only thing that matters right now for our survival." Ilara pulled back slightly, unsure if she should be thankful for the food or completely disgusted by my methods. But when Zoe immediately tore into the bread, smiling with relief and happiness, Ilara kept quiet. She was slowly learning that survival blurred the lines between right and wrong, and I lived every single day in those blurred, difficult places. That night, thunder rumbled far away, a distant but powerful threat to our quiet safety. Ilara crawled close to Zoe, unable to sleep because of the loud noises and her constant worry. Across the room, I sat quietly on guard, my knife resting on my knee, constantly watching the darkness for any sign of trouble. She looked at me in the dim candlelight, my tiredness, my scars, my quiet, intense alertness and focus. I looked more like a dedicated soldier than a homeless man right then. "Why do you keep risking absolutely everything for us, two strangers?" she whispered, trying one last time to understand my actions. I hesitated, then told her the deepest truth I had been hiding. "Because I failed someone very important to me once, a long time ago. I will not fail to protect another innocent person again." Ilara's throat tightened with emotion. She wanted to ask who I had failed, but my eyes told her that the wound was still fresh and painful, even after all this time has passed. Our weak peace was completely shattered the next day. The men in suits returned, and this time there were even more of them, showing they meant serious business. Ilara spotted them from a broken window, and pure panic flooded her face instantly. I cursed loudly and low under my breath. "They must have finally tracked your phone signal, or something you had with you." Ilara grabbed Zoe tightly. "We have to run now," she panicked, but I shook my head hard at her suggestion. "Not yet. Running without a real plan is just suicide at this point." I quickly scanned the library, my eyes working fast to find a way out. There is a back door, but they will be watching it. We need a distraction, a big one that draws all their attention. Ilara stared at me, terrified of what I was planning to do. "What kind of distraction do you mean?" she asked fearfully. I met her gaze firmly, showing my resolve. "The kind that makes them chase me, not you two," I explained. Before she could argue or stop me, I shoved a heavy metal pipe into her hand. "If they find you, you must not hesitate at all. Hit them as hard as you can." Ilara's hands were shaking violently, unable to hold the weight of the pipe steadily. "I can't do that, Milo. I'm not a fighter like you," she cried out. "You will if you absolutely have to." I cut her off firmly, my eyes intense. "You have to save Zoe now." Then I moved fast and completely silent, slipping out a side door I had already planned to use for my escape. Moments later, loud shouts erupted outside the building walls. Ilara's stomach lurched with sudden deep fear. I had done it. I had successfully drawn all of their attention to myself. Through the window, she saw a quick flash of me, sprinting through the rain-soaked streets. The men were chasing me, and she saw the quick, dark glint of guns in the dim light of the day. Her heart felt like it was breaking with worry and sadness. This man, dirty and completely broken, was willingly throwing himself into mortal danger for her and her daughter. She wanted to scream my name and tell me to stop, but all she could do was hold Zoe close to her and pray hard for my safe return. Hours passed by, each one feeling like an eternity of worry and fear. Ilara held Zoe so tightly it almost hurt the small girl. Every small creak of the old library sent her pulse racing with anxiety, fearing the men would return. Finally, the door slowly creaked open and I stumbled inside, soaked, badly bruised, and clearly hurt, but still thankfully alive. Ilara let out a huge breath that hurt her chest from being held so long. "You are completely insane, Milo," she whispered, half in shock and half in intense relief that I was safe. I managed a weak, bloodied smirk for her. "Maybe I am insane, but you and your daughter are safe now," I replied with certainty. Ilara's eyes were burning with tears she hadn't allowed to fall in years. She couldn't find the right words to thank me for my immense sacrifice. Instead, she gently pressed a clean rag onto the cut on my cheek, her hands shaking slightly with emotion and care. For the first time since the storm, she touched me willingly, not with fear or repulsion, but with a fragile, true sense of care and concern for my health. That night, Ilara couldn't sleep at all. She watched me from across the room, my chest moving slowly up and down as I finally slept deeply, exhausted from the day. Zoe, curled up right beside me, held my rough hand in a small fist as if it were the softest, safest thing in the entire world. Ilara's heart felt twisted with emotion and confusion. She remembered the expensive world of boardrooms and chandeliers, but none of that power felt as real or important as this moment. The dirt, the danger, and a man who gave everything without ever asking for a single thing in return. For the first time in her life. She wondered if she had made a terrible mistake in judging, not just me, but the entire world she thought she knew so well. Morning arrived with a quiet, fragile light, making the broken parts of the windows shine gold. I woke up, groaning softly, but I was fine, only a little sore. Ilara met my eyes across the room. I felt a strong, unspoken moment pass between us, a feeling of deep gratitude, respect, and deep confusion over what we had become to each other in such a short time. Zoe bounced up immediately, smiling brightly and happily. "We are a team now, Milo," she announced with confidence. Ilara almost corrected her daughter, but the words just wouldn't come out of her mouth. Maybe her daughter was exactly right after all. Maybe, against all expectations, this strange partnership had grown into something real and strong that could survive anything. Ilara didn't know what the future would hold for the three of us, but she knew one absolute truth deep down in her heart. Our shared journey with Milo was far from over. The storm that first brought us together was just the beginning of a much larger, more important fight that was waiting for us in the busy city. The morning light became bright and clear. Ilara decided that simply hiding was a slow way to finally die. She found a working payphone and called her lawyer with a strong sense of purpose. She told him she would sign nothing, take back nothing, and that she would meet the Attorney General at noon with all the evidence she had, including the secret recordings. I listened from the curb, my cut still slowly healing on my cheek, saying little to no words. My eyes were fixed on the library door, where Zoe was drawing a simple picture on the ground. "They will come for you very quickly and very hard," I warned her softly, knowing what the powerful men were capable of doing. "Let them come," Ilara answered, her voice now solid and completely unafraid of their threats. They arrived even faster than our courage could prepare for the fight. 2 dark vehicles quickly drove past us, like hungry sharks checking which boat was the weakest to attack. Men in neat, polite suits got out of the cars, but their politeness ended immediately in their cruel, determined intentions. I smelled their violence before I even saw it clearly. Some people wear violence like a cheap, ugly perfume. "Use the back door now, Ilara," I instructed her, already moving to shield her with my body. But the front door was suddenly thrown open with a crash, and a man's voice called Ilara's name, the sound of it like a sharp warning shot. Zoe's drawing floated gently to the floor in the sudden breeze. "We just need to have a simple conversation," the lead man smiled, a completely fake and empty expression on his face. That was when I stepped fully between them, completely exposed. I was a wall of scars and tired strength, nothing more. I knew these people very well. I had worked for their type years ago, before I lost everything I had. I had been paid to see threats before they even happened, and to protect rich people who could afford to buy security from the city's best. Years ago, I had worked security for a company that Alara had worked for. She hadn't even spoken the name out loud, but it was a deep, old wound on her company's reputation. When I spoke the company name out loud, when I gave the exact date of the incident, and when I said the internal file number of the warning, Alara was completely shocked, thinking she was the only one who remembered the problem. Alara felt dizzy and faint. "You were the one who helped me then," she whispered, finally understanding everything. "I was the one who sent the warning package," I confirmed honestly. It had been a small problem back then, stealing money, faking safety tests on products. I had anonymously sent a package that stopped a new product from launching and saved several factory workers from terrible burns they never knew they almost got. And for that one honest act of kindness, I was immediately fired, completely ruined, and given the quiet, deadly punishments that powerful men can easily write and enforce. My own failures finished what the company had started against me. I didn't tell Alara all of that painful story. I didn't need to explain all the details. She saw the simple truth. The company she loved had broken a good, honest man. Her apology to me stumbled awkwardly on such old, deep pain that was still with me. "Now we will fix it all together," I said simply, as if the solution were as easy as finding bread for a meal. Then I turned my full attention to the three dangerous men in the room. I walked the path they would take in my head, figuring out all the angles and distances between us. I calculated exactly how much fear would travel down Zoe's spine if I didn't end this quickly. "No trying to be a hero, Alara," I told her quietly. "They want you for the news headline. They will completely underestimate me," the footnote. She almost laughed nervously at my description of myself. "How does a footnote stop a whole chapter, Milo?" she asked. But my eyes were focused on the outcome of the fight. I would trip up their whole plan and hand the result over to the law, which was already on its way. The first man reached out, a small, harmless-looking touch that men use to take complete control. I moved my wrist only 6 inches to the side, enough to make his hand hurt badly. Then I guided him hard into an old metal shelf, which groaned loudly. The man cried out in pain. His pride hurt worse than his body. A second suit charged at me faster and harder. I stepped into him instead of away, letting his own rushing force do all the fighting for me. "Stop this!" Alara commanded loudly, her voice clear and strong. She didn't say it to save the men, but to keep Zoe from seeing blood and violence. But the man didn't stop because money teaches people to ignore things they don't want to hear. The sirens, thin at first, grew louder and more certain, closer to the building. Alara's lawyer, thankfully very stubborn and well-connected, had called in favors, and now blue lights flashed through the cracked windows, promising that consequences were coming for the bad men. One of the suits, panicking badly in the moment, suddenly grabbed Zoe, a desperate, foolish move, snatching a pawn when the king is cornered and trapped. I went absolutely still, like a predator ready to strike with incredible speed. Every muscle in my body felt tense and ready to fight. "Don't you dare touch her," I warned him. It wasn't a simple threat. It was a simple final warning of what would happen next. The man slowly backed toward the side exit, Zoe held tightly in his grip, rigid with the effort of not crying out in fear. "Walk slowly, Alara," I told her quietly. "Talk to him and keep him distracted." Alara's voice was perfectly steady and calm as she spoke. She first said the man's name, bringing him closer to his own horrible actions. Then she recited the law he was breaking, the jail where his partners were now sitting, and the judge who had zero patience left for criminals like him. And while she talked, I moved like the steady hand of a clock, slow, small steps forward, no rushing, letting his fear burn itself out completely. Zoe's eyes found mine in the light, like a small, lost boat finding a lighthouse in the heavy fog. On my count, "Jump," I whispered to her silently. When I reached the number 3, the man looked only at me and completely forgot about the small child in his arms. You don't need to be huge or loud when you know all the angles and weaknesses of your opponent. I shifted the man's elbow, not his pride, just enough to make his tendons complain loudly in pain. Zoe slipped out instantly, like the truth slipping out of a bad story, and landed safely against my chest. Alara gasped loudly, the sound holding a year's worth of breath she had been holding in fear. The police immediately filled the doorway, bringing professionalism and paperwork into the chaos. The lead detective looked quickly at Alara, then at the defeated suits, and finally at me with a questioning look. "You okay, Milo?" he asked me simply. I nodded, truly surprised he asked for my well-being. "We all will be fine, thank you," Alara answered for me, her voice now completely strong, the room filled with officials and the slow, heavy process of accountability and justice. Alara handed over the flash drive and the 3 sworn statements she had prepared. It was the heavy price of telling the truth that had millions of dollars attached to it. The detective listened carefully, then shook her hand. Not as a rich person, but as a respected person who had done the very right thing for the people. "We'll finish this fight for you," he promised her with a nod. The men went away in handcuffs, their expensive phones bagged, their confident posture gone completely, folded up like cheap camping chairs being put away. Zoe held onto my thumb in a small, tight fist and did not let go for anything. She acted as if she was afraid I might simply disappear into the air at any moment. News traveled very fast. By evening, the story was not "Billionaire and Scandal," but "Billionaire Saved, Whistleblower Found." In the background shots on the news, they showed a common, simple man with a healing cut on his cheek whose name the news initially refused to say, calling him a tramp. Alara stood at a podium in a clean public building and spoke powerful words her public relations team would normally have feared for her to say. She talked about systems that reward cruelty and about debts that could never be paid with just money. She spoke about dignity and what it truly means. She spoke about a man who had saved her twice in 2 days, and once, years ago, without her even knowing. She said my name, Milo, into the microphones, not once but 3 times, clear and loud. She did this because repeating a name helps people remember it and believe it. When one reporter rudely asked, "Isn't he just a homeless man?" Alara did not even blink her eyes. "He is a man," she said softly, and the word just fell off the sentence like a leaf falling in autumn. Zoe, happy and safe on a chair, waved at no one in particular and whispered to me with a beautiful smile, "This is our movie, Milo." I, who had never been the star of anything but my own failures, felt a strong, deep urge to cry with happiness. Offers of help and money came flooding in. TV deals, book contracts, a formal apology from a board member, and a clean job greeting people in a fancy office building. I sorted through them all the way I used to sort through trash behind restaurants, knowing exactly what was worth saving and what would only cause problems later in my life. Alara brought me the one and only offer that truly mattered to me. "I want you to lead a new program we are starting," she said, her eyes serious and determined. "We will build the shelters the right way, small, strong, and safe. We will hire safety marshals directly from the street who know the city best. They must be trained to see danger before it even starts," I added, agreeing with her plan. "And they must be paid well and trusted from the very start. No charity titles or pity. Real work and real pay. Real work and real pay," she promised again. I had finally found my wings again, not by flying back into the sky, but by building a safe, strong nest on the ground for others who had also been knocked down by the storm of life.